Hey there, Fourth Trimester listeners. Our program today is proudly sponsored by Family Album, your secure haven for sharing baby photos and videos. Head over to the App Store today, search Family Album, one word, download the app, and start creating a legacy of love, one photo at a time. Hi, I'm Sarah Trott, and welcome to the Fourth Trimester Podcast. I'm a new mama, and this podcast is all about postpartum care for the first few months following birth, the time period also known as the fourth trimester. My postpartum doula, Esther Gallagher, is my co-host. She's a mother, grandmother, perinatal educator, birth and postpartum care provider. Fourth trimester care, our topic, is about the practical, emotional, and social support parents and baby require. And importantly, it helps set the tone for the continuing journey of parenting. Everyone, welcome back to the Fourth Trimester. I'm here today with guest Beth Berry. She is a writer, life coach, mother of 4 daughters. She has a site called Revolution from Home, and she's currently completing her own book called Motherwhelmed. Now, Beth and I connected because I read an amazing article of hers called In the Absence of the Village, Mothers Struggle Most. And it resonated with us here at the Fourth Trimester Podcast. And she has graced us with her presence today. We're so grateful for that. And Beth, I would just love to hear from you a little bit about what it is that you're doing with your site and your book and your life coaching.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate being here and being invited. So I have been blogging for some years. My family and I moved with my husband and my 4 daughters to Mexico 6 years ago now, I guess. And we lived there for 4 years. And when I was there and finally had a little time and space in my life, I began blogging and realized that it was something I really enjoyed. And my life coaching practice evolved out of my connection that I was forging with all of these women through my blog. So it's been an evolution in that sense. And, I didn't know what, the concept of a revolution from home meant something really different to me 6 years ago when I started. I knew that it was something that felt strong in me, that there was a passion there, but it's taken some time to really figure out what that means to me. At first it was sort of like this alternative, it's an alternative movement of mothers. I could feel the fire, it was something that I had to sit with for a while and give space to figure out what that was. Now I really see it as, the revolution it's happening within each one of us. I think that there are women across the board, across cultures, particularly within cultures where we're starting to realize that we have the support and time and resources and energy supposedly to be able to create change in our lives, but we're still struggling. So many women are still struggling. And so the revolution, that's in my heart, has to do with how do we shift some of these major cultural stories that are in place that are still keeping mothers in particular in a struggle that is, disproportionate to where we are as a culture. So I work one-on-one with women. I offer groups, and I'm just about to lead my first retreat this next week. So it's exciting and a really beautiful thing to get to witness so many women in their process of sort of awakening to their own true sense of power and stepping into motherhood or allowing motherhood to change them into somebody entirely different, and getting to support them through that process has been really beautiful.
Oh, that's such a wonderful offering. Moms need so much support. Do you find that the women who are coming to you or who you're finding for your services are women who are about to become moms for the first time? Or are they moms with babies or moms with older kids? Or what's the spectrum looking like?
It's been a pretty wide variety of mothers. I'm finding really that most people don't actually reach out for the kind of support that they actually need until they've sort of had their butts kicked for a while. That's what I'm finding. That's what most of the time seems to be happening, is that women go down this path of motherhood for a while, and they're trying their very best to be independent and forge on and prove to themselves, to the rest of the world that they have what it takes, kind of a thing. There's that air. And then years down the road, they recognize that they're becoming more and more frustrated sometimes, or feeling like a lot of isolation. It's a pretty common theme. A feeling of disempowerment. Disempowerment is kind of rampant. I see a lot of that particular set of feelings, and are really ready to reclaim a sense of self and figure out, what does it mean to be a conscious-minded woman and mother, but also have a sense of self that isn't entirely based on motherhood, because we are mothers and women, and I really think it's so important that our children see us as both. And so that's what I'm finding, is that it's a very small percentage of women who actually sort of give themselves permission to get the support they need, pre-baby having, and then postpartum. It tends to be the women down the road who are like at the end of the rope going, I can't do this anymore. Mm-hmm. I need help. So that's the theme so far.
Mm. And so important to be able to recognize that in oneself and have that awareness.
Yeah.
Because it takes a huge degree of vulnerability to admit, I need help.
Right. Yep. And I think that's really based on some deeply seated cultural stories around independence and autonomy that really are unfounded. I mean, they're based on sort of antiquated ways of thinking about things. They're not based on a social model that I think is really supportive of where we are and where we're headed. I think support is essential for every human being at every stage in life, and there should be no exception for mothers. And I actually think that this particular, the postpartum period, early childhood, is a time in our lives we need more support than ever, that we actually find ourselves with less support than ever. And that's a dynamic that I think it's causing, you can see it across the culture, how pervasive that message is, that we hold within ourselves even, and the damage that it's causing, the sense of isolation and frustration. And, along with that, women feeling as if they have to be in one camp or another. I'm either a stay-home mom or I'm a working mom, or I'm either, this sort of crunchy, alternative thinking mom who's doing all the things within the alternative mindset, or I'm not. And it's really unfortunate that there isn't a greater sense of, here's who I am as a person, and here's me, here's what I need in order to thrive as a woman and as a mother. And then how do we parent through that, who we really are instead of who we should be.
Becoming a mother for the first time is a huge life change. And it's one where I think that identification of self, of who I am, changes a lot. And so I think what I'm hearing you say is that there's a bit of a balancing act that has to happen with that. Yeah,
I think so. And really an opportunity for us to hold that as a really sacred transition. And, culturally, that's not really happening so much. There are even messages out there that I think are really destructive. Just this idea that we're meant to bounce back after babies. I don't buy it. I think we're meant to transform into a different version of the women we are. Motherhood is an incredibly powerful experience that, if held as something powerful and sacred and beautiful and wonderful, and then we get to step into an evolved version of ourselves, really. But that takes feeling supported. It takes feeling like your needs aren't always being compromised. There's only so much that we can do and feel good about doing as women, or any human being, without having some of our basic needs met. And I find that many, many women postpartum and well into motherhood, until they decide to shift the story for themselves, hobble around with tons of unmet needs, anything from sleep, obviously, to time with their girlfriends, just kind of getting out of the kid space for a minute, taking a breath, to alone time. I can't tell you how many women come to me and just say, I feel so guilty about this, but I have to get a break. And I'm, amazing that there's so much guilt around these things because yes, of course we do need breaks. Our nervous systems are constantly engaged when we're with our children. There is no break physiologically because we're wired to protect them and to nurture them and to be caring for and meeting their basic needs. So in the absence of any kind of a break for ourselves, you can see why there's so much of a sense of burnout.
Yeah. And I know, speaking from my own experience, I felt very wired towards meeting my baby's every need when I was in my fourth trimester. And I think that's right.
Yep.
And I think that's part of what makes this so hard as a transition is that I identified as a mom, and I guess I'm possibly having a pretty common experience, but I felt happy to be sacrificing my own needs in order for someone else's. It's also important to know that there's a way to balance, yes, sacrifice, but then also making sure my own needs are met, because if they're not, then I'm not going to do a great job of looking after other people, not just my baby, but my husband, my, other children.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's a really critical point and so essential for each of us to recognize that as mothers, yes, there is an amount of sacrifice built in. That's part of it. I think that's actually part of our evolution as women, is that we're learning to be more giving, but I think we're also meant to be learning to be more comfortable with vulnerability and leaning in when we need help and support and asking for the things we need. I think that's a learning curve that comes along with motherhood. But I think it's so essential what you said about needing to meet our needs so that we're capable of meeting other people's needs, and doing so without feeling resentful and frustrated and losing our temper or whatever. It's not an easy thing. A little bit of my backstory for perspective in that regard. I have 4 daughters. They are now 9, 11, 15, and 21. And when I was very in it, when it came to early parenthood, that I was a stay-home mom. I made some money from home, but was primarily focused on the kids. So when my kids were little, I was so in it with motherhood that I had a hard time seeing things clearly, in particular when it came to my own needs, because truly their needs seemed more important than mine, because they're good at expressing their needs. Kids are really good at that.
Yes, they are.
So when theirs are constantly being expressed and they're so clear to us and we're biologically wired to meet them, it's a really easy time to lose touch with what we need. And some women are not accustomed to considering their needs in that way before motherhood. It's not hard to meet our needs when we're not being compromised in that way. So it takes a shift in the way we think about that. But, what happened for me is that I had a bunch of kids and felt like I was able to handle things fairly well. And then another one came and I was like, okay, this is getting, I'm in it. And kind of just kept adding tools and coping strategies. After my 4th daughter was born, I'll never forget the moment. Actually, I was sitting in my living room in this tiny little house that we could barely afford. I was staying home with the kids. I was homeschooling one of them. I had one in an alternative school. We could only afford for her to be going there. And then I had a newborn and a 2-year-old. I was nursing both of them. So I had my newborn in my lap, nursing her. She was sick and not feeling well. The 2-year-old was crying because she wanted to nurse. And just the thought of nursing her again I just was like, I couldn't do it. And then my 6-year-old was crying because she was like, I thought we were going to do our homeschool thing today. And I was looking at her feeling guilty. And my 13-year-old at the time was screaming at me because the house was filthy and I thought we were going to go shopping. And I was looking at my life and the feelings that I had at that moment. I thought, I just started sobbing, and I, deep down, I realized that I had this wonderful, beautiful life with all these amazing people, and I felt no joy. I had lost access to the core of who I was because I had to implement so many coping strategies just to be surviving. I was in survival mode. So I, at that point, things shifted. I realized I couldn't do it like this anymore. Because I didn't want to have so much beauty around me and not be able to access it, and so much joy around me and not be able to feel it. And so at that point, the shift happened. So that was about 9 years ago. The shift in me was pretty simple. It was, I had to stop thinking about, okay, what's in the best interest of these 4 kids. And my new sort of mantra was, how can we come away from this experience of life together with 5 whole women, not 4. It couldn't be about just my kids anymore. I had to be one of those in line as far as the prioritization was concerned. And that changed everything. And my path has shifted dramatically ever since that.
Mm-hmm. What a tremendous experience. Who was looking after you during your 4th trimester?
That's a good question. I have, my husband has always been very supportive and done the best he could, but he was supporting us financially. So the pressures on him were pretty immense. He had kind of different roles to be playing. When he was home, he was great. He wasn't home very much. So when he wasn't home, and I had by that point created some community within our kids' school and things, but everybody's kind of doing their own thing and stressed about their own stuff. And so I wouldn't say, and I have family who came a little bit, but as far as that sense of feeling well supported myself, that happened a little more with each kid, but it had everything to do with me recognizing I was worthy of the support, that I did not have to do it alone, and that actually giving myself permission to get the support I needed. So with the 4th child, when someone said, hey, I would love to make a meal, a sign up list with kids that are, from the parents at the school. And by that point, I knew better than to be like, oh no, it's okay. Like I might have with the 1st or 2nd kid. And I was like, thank you so much. Yes, I will accept. We have to learn to be on the receiving end of support. And so I learned that, but it took a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that is why your article is so interesting to me. I would love to hear your take on how you could compare and contrast maybe our modern experiences of that, where maybe someone makes an offer like that, which is very generous and very welcome, to maybe a time when like village life would have just stepped in and automatically did a few things for women. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that one thing we forget is that the way that our culture is structured right now it's quite new. This is not the way things have been for very long, relatively speaking. We have needed each other to survive. We couldn't have done as many things as we do alone back in the day. And so what I have seen, I've had experiences of more of sort of the village feel, the tribe throughout my life. One of the most profound was the time we lived in Mexico. And I've just started realizing how unnatural it is, the structure that our society has in place right now, where, women and mothers and fathers are isolated in homes, trying to figure it out on their own, with the cultural stories that say you can do it, independence is a good thing. I don't think that that's the natural order of things. I believe we're pack mammals. We're meant to be supporting one another in every regard. So even just looking back to my own experience as a young girl, how much more kids were roaming through the neighborhoods, just that fact alone changes everything. There are so few neighborhoods anymore where you can find roaming packs of children, and how much pressure that puts on the mothers and fathers who are home with the kids to not only be making dinner and keeping up with the housework, but also being their children's entertainment and trying to work to make money. That's a lot. It ends up being too much. And I think that the prevalence of anxiety and stress in our culture has a lot to do with the way things are structured at the moment. I think in a more natural order, we would have the support systems that we need in the way of aunts and friends and cousins and grandmothers in our homes more, helping out with the general stuff, bringing meals, taking other children away, enhancing our experiences.
Yeah. And I think that there's a sense of what normal is today.
Mm-hmm.
In my experience, having babies for the first time now in America means an expectation of maybe having help, maybe not, but basically playing all of these roles, right? There's the idea of as you said, these personas of working mom or stay-at-home mom or granola crunchy mom, and you get to pick which one you want to be, but whatever you pick, you're doing everything.
Yep.
You're doing all of it. And no, it's not safe to let your kid run around the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just do that.
Right.
So it's a lot. It's a lot. And so I think I really liked what you were saying in your article about getting that support that we need.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. I think that one of the cultural stories in place right now that's really destructive is that if you have support or have the ability to ask for support in whatever way, you're kind of privileged. You know, if you have, even just looking at something as simple as having someone come and, you know, housekeeping, somebody to come help you clean your house, even if it's once every 2 weeks or every month, that is seen as a huge privilege. When we lived in Mexico, even the people in the middle to lower classes who really didn't have a lot of money, lots of them hire people to help them clean or help them take care of the kids because those people need the work. And there isn't as much of the sense of, I have to do it all myself. There is a more of a familial, collective mentality of course you can't do it all yourself. How in the world would you work and take care of your kids and keep up with your housework? Nobody does that. It's a cultural story. Those are storylines. And so I think it's really up to us to shift them. I don't think it's going to happen from the top down. It's going to happen when more and more mothers wake up to the fact that we're not meant to live compromised lives in that sense, that's not necessary, but it really takes us realizing that we are worthy of a higher quality of life.
Do you think women need to give themselves permission?
Absolutely. I think there's all kinds of things that when we really look at it, that we don't give ourselves permission for. Even the simplest things, when we actually get some downtime and we're exhausted, there are lots of people who wouldn't let themselves take a nap and really catch up on the sleep that they needed because they feel like they should be doing something else. And, it's a big thing that I work with people around a lot. I can't tell you how many times I can just say, what do you need to give yourself permission for around this? And then there's this sort of light bulb that goes off and we realize how much it really is about us being able to say, I can do this differently than I have been, or giving ourselves permission to think about something in a different way, to try something different, and to think outside the box and think outside of the voices in our heads that are coming from other people, whether it's other, mothers, whether it's our mother-in-law who's got an opinion about it, whether it's, bloggers who are, we've been inspired by, that we each have our own way that is going to feel more natural and is ultimately going to be better for our family dynamic than anything created by someone else.
Mm-hmm. So faced with the decision, do I vacuum my filthy floor or go on a walk or do something, read a book, take a bath, do something that's relaxing for me?
Yep.
I think that it's tough for a lot of people because ignoring something like housework or a chore, even temporarily, can create a lot of guilt.
Yep. It's true.
Or feelings of failure.
Mm-hmm.
Like, my standard is that my house should be clean. Everything needs to be great for my kid. Otherwise, I'm not doing a great job as a mom.
Right. And those are the storylines that I think are most important to break, are the ones that attach our accomplishments with our sense of worth, our self-worth. Because when we attach our sense of self-worth to our accomplishments, we are setting ourselves up. When we allow that paradigm, there's almost never enough that we can do. We can almost never be good enough, because if the house is dirty, but we got a nap, you've still failed. If you manage to get some exercise, but your kid sat in front of the screens while that happened, you failed. It's a setup. It doesn't work. So, I think that there are always going to be compromises within any life experience. But when we compromise our basic needs and really the longings, the deeper longings that we have, the things that help us come alive, those are the things that I think are most tragic to compromise. So for me, it's alone time. If I don't have alone time, it's really hard for me to feel joyful and that was why I struggled so much at my lowest point 9 years ago, because I was homeschooling and I had babies and I had toddlers and it was like never, ever, ever, ever got a break. And it didn't work for me. I now have a completely different lifestyle where I'm alone doing my work all day, every day. And I now see how essential it is to my thriving, because I'm deeply introverted and I love quiet and introspection. And so being able to recognize the more self-aware we become, the more we know ourselves and honor what we need in order to thrive, the better we can show up in the world for anyone we care for.
Hey, fellow parents, can we take a moment to reflect on the joyous chaos that is parenthood? You know those days when our hearts swell with love at the sight of our little ones and we're bursting at the seams to share every adorable moment with the world. But let's be real. Some things are better kept in the family, and your loved ones who matter the most aren't always close by, and they might not be that tech-savvy either. So how can you easily share your baby's beautiful growth with loved ones while keeping your precious memories secure? I remember the frustration of trying to use some of the big tech photo solutions, only to find they fell short of what I needed. That's when I stumbled upon something truly remarkable, the Family Album app. The Family Album app was created to give parents a secure and easy way to share photos and videos with loved ones. It's an orderly and totally secure haven for your family's personal memories. I love that there's no third-party ads, no unwanted eyes, unlimited storage, and that it's totally free. So to all the parents who are out there still trying to use other messaging apps for your kids' photos, it's time to level up your family photo game with a free photo sharing app. Head over to the App Store today, search Family Album, one word, download the app, and start creating a legacy of love one photo at a time.
How do we separate that notion of accomplishment and doing and self-worth?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I think that at the core, that comes down to figuring out, really believing that our self-worth is not attached to our accomplishments, that we are worthy by nature of being human. We were born worthy. There's nothing we have to do to prove that we are worthy as human beings. And being able to root ourselves in something that is not outside of ourselves, that it becomes, for me, motherhood has grown into really a spiritual practice. It's something that through motherhood, I have been able to recognize so much about myself and my own soul and my heart. One of the things that I think is really important is that we be doing things according to what helps us to feel strong, who we really are at the core. What does our soul really have to express? Instead of just, what do my kids need? What does my boss need? What does my husband need? What does my soul need? Because when we're tapped into that deeper sense of self, we then feel lit up by our experiences. So small examples, if we are parenting in a way that lights us up. So some of the things that I enjoy doing with my kids, I really, really don't like when my kids were little, I did not like getting on the floor playing make-believe with whatever things they had, play in that way was hard for me, particularly when the dishes are piling up and the laundry pile is overflowing and all the things need to be done. But there are ways that I really love to play. And for me, it's more about going to the park with the soccer ball and playing a pickup game of soccer. I like that kind of play better. So giving myself permission, recognizing that both of these things are important to me. Relative sanity within the house. I've long since let go of, the high standards in housework, particularly when I know I have all these other things going. But it's also important to me that I connect with my kids through play, particularly when they're asking me for that. But I think that when we can hold a sense of self and say, no matter what I choose in this moment, it's okay. I'm okay. They're okay. And trusting that it shifts things, that we're not motivated. I think it has a lot to do with our motivation. So if we're motivated from a place of guilt or what I should be doing, it's a very different experience than our motivation coming from, I want to connect with this person, or I really want to feel good, and therefore I got to get these dishes done first so that I don't feel so crazy. I think checking our motivations is really key, and also giving ourselves permission to parent and to show up in the world according to what helps us to feel strong instead of what we think we should be doing. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. Yeah. And going back to what you were saying earlier, I wanted to kind of understand from you what you think would be helpful for women who are about to become moms for the first time. What can they do to help prepare for motherhood in terms of securing that self-worth, securing that identity, and maybe start, like, what questions can they be asking themselves beforehand to prepare for that transition?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. So I think one of the things is to really be honest with ourselves about the fact that we have needs. Everybody has needs. This culture has kind of associated needs with neediness, and made it into something that's sort of a sign of weakness. I think that's bogus. I really think that honoring the fact that we all have needs and that our needs are individual, as individuals all have different needs, is really important. And so if before you have babies, if you know that you're introverted, for example, and need alone time, being able to start brainstorming ahead of time, how am I going to get those small breaks? And it doesn't have to be long stretches of time, because likely when the baby's born, many women are wired to want to be with their baby all the time. But noticing in yourself that actually getting a break to exhale and just go out, even just be outside for an hour, go for a hike or whatever, asking yourself, how can I honor this about myself and work it into my lifestyle? Even if it means, okay, I got to pretty soon in this game, I'm going to give myself this much time, and then I'm going to start looking for somebody to be able to come over, 4 hours a week so that I can step out and just get a breath of fresh air and whatever it is. Or, even it could be something completely different than that. If you love your job and you don't want to quit to stay home with your baby, then being able to honor that and push all the voices out from all the culture and all the people who have an opinion about it, and really sit with that and go, is giving this up something that I can do authentically without feeling resentful? Is this a part of who I am that's really, really important to me? If it is, then how can the two coexist? And how can you do that in a way that honors your baby and honors you and honors your family dynamic?
Mm-hmm. Do women ever change their minds after they have their baby?
Oh gosh, yes. I think most women are shocked by the shift and by how much we shift as women. Because again, these things are hardly ever talked about. I hardly ever hear people really giving this space, and holding this time as a sacred transition. And it's mind-boggling to some women how much they shift. I mean, there are women who are absolutely certain that they will go back to work in 6 weeks. And then, 3 weeks into it, they're a mess. They're falling apart inside because they can't fathom it. They cannot. There are other women who, are totally hell-bent on staying home with their babies. And a couple months down the road, they realize they're shriveling up inside. It's not working for them. It's too much anxiety or too much pressure, or perhaps their baby is really, really, really high needs and it's just too much. And then they have to shift there and give themselves permission to rethink what they were doing. I think we've got to have flexibility around this time. I think we've got to hold a huge amount of space for ourselves to be surprised, to be able to go, I have no idea what's about to hit me, but I'm going to be open, and to be gentle with ourselves and kind and compassionate with ourselves. so that, whatever happens, we are giving ourselves some grace and realizing this is new terrain and this is no small thing.
Yeah. Are there ways that women can practice self-love as kind of an exercise before having a baby so that they're able to recognize those moments when like, oh, hey, I need a break?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think one of the things is being able to recognize, just like, when you think about, I was a La Leche League leader for a while and supported women in the breastfeeding relationship. And one of the things we talked about was learning early signs of hunger, that, screaming, crying in the part of a baby is actually a late sign of hunger. One of the early signs of hunger is rooting around and looking for the breast or the nipple. That's early signs. Doing the same for yourself. What are the early signs of burnout? What are the early signs of overwhelm? Instead of waiting until we're, the wheels are falling off. When I had babies and was doing the whole cloth diaper thing and was really committed to that for a long time, what I realize now looking back is that when I made the switch after, 3 babies in and I was so overwhelmed and I reluctantly finally introduced disposable diapers to our lives, at least part of the time. Looking back, I didn't see it at the time. At the time, I felt like a total fraud, a sellout. Now I look back and actually see that was a loving act toward myself. It was saying, I'm going to take some of the pressure off of you. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to do all the things all the time. And, other simple acts of self-love can be anything from looking at your body that's changed postpartum and really honoring different parts of it. So many women have embattled relationships with their bodies postpartum. And, even just taking time, drawing a hot bath with essential oils and something that's really, really pleasant, and candles, and, someone else has got the children for an hour or two. Mm-hmm. And taking some time for self-care, and not just let it be about, I need a break. Oh my gosh, I'm falling apart. I need a bath, or I need a break. But actually using that, figuring out what can help nourish you. And some of that is thinking nourishing thoughts during that time, re-engaging with your belly, for example, in this area of our bodies that's so transformed postpartum, mm-hmm. and thanking that part of your body for this incredible gift that it gave you and the transformation, and really reestablishing a new relationship with that part of your body. Because we culturally now we have, perhaps stretch marks and it's this, unsightly thing. That's just a story. I have come to see how absolutely beautiful this transition can be if we're holding it in a different space. So self-love can be healing your relationship with this a part of your body that you've really been critical about and feeling bad about. It can look like getting a sitter or being honest with your partner that you need a break, every Wednesday night. This is one of the things that I did early on after that kind of breakdown after my 4th baby was born, is that I realized I got to get a break. I have to get breaks. And so my husband started watching the kids on Wednesday nights. That was my night. And I went and I knitted with my girlfriends. And then I started stretching that a little bit longer and a little bit longer as my baby got older. And I joined a rowing club. And so I was rowing and knitting, and I looked forward to Wednesday nights, and that became that self-care of, what do I need to fill back up? Asking those questions. What do I need right now? And honoring that. I needed connection with other women. I needed not to be needed by other people. I needed to get back in my physical body. I needed to be out in nature on the water. And so I was able within, I had like 5 hours every Wednesday afternoon and evening that was mine to be able to refill a bunch of those needs. I see those as really important acts of self-love.
And it seems possible that we could actually prepare for that before the baby.
Yep.
So many things, so we can prepare to be proud of our body.
Yeah. Yep.
It's interesting when women are pregnant, it's such a wonderful badge of honor. You know, I often see women like walking around pregnant and we're not ashamed of our bellies.
Right.
We're really happy and proud of our bellies. But then after the baby is born, it's something that we try to hide.
Yeah, exactly.
And why is that? Our body just did something miraculous.
Right.
And shifting that story in our head to be so proud of our bodies. We did something amazing. And just loving that body so much feels really important. And I think preparing to have that conversation with yourself so that when you're in the bath for the first time and you look at your body, you're not thinking, oh man, I'm so wrecked. You're thinking, wow, I just did something incredible.
Exactly. Yep. And, you know, I see us, our generation of women, really as pioneers in this regard, because we're coming off of centuries of shame around our bodies at all, covering anything and not having a sense for, I mean, there's been so much shaming around women's sexuality and bodies and hiding of those things for so long. And now I feel that we are in a really important and beautiful position to be able to say, no, actually, I am proud of this. And that our generation of women has a huge amount of potential to be able to shift some of this stuff. And you see it slowly but surely happening. And, you know, it starts with the relationship we have with ourselves. And we're not going to get that permission from other people necessarily. The more we're looking for our culture to affirm our worth and to affirm our beauty, the more dissatisfied we're going to be and frustrated we're going to become, because that's not where it's coming from yet. You know, like maybe one day we will actually have a culture that celebrates the postpartum body. Wouldn't that be amazing? Not yet.
Yes.
We're not there. So we've got to realize that the truth deep within us is that we are deeply proud of our bodies for what's happened, and that we revere and we honor this experience for ourselves and women across the board. And, you know, the more that we learn to honor ourselves, we're honoring humanity. We're honoring, you know, the sacred feminine. We're honoring women and mothers everywhere by honoring ourselves. And I think that thinking of things in those broader terms helps me a lot to realize that these small shifts that we're making in the way that we show up with ourselves is about something way, way greater than just us.
Absolutely. And on a practical side, we can also prepare for making that time. So maybe before the baby is born, before our nerves are shot, we can have the conversation with a best friend or a postpartum doula or a parent or a partner to say, hey, I need my Wednesday night.
Right.
I need my Saturday morning.
Yep.
Maybe it's just a couple of hours where on a regular basis, someone comes to help out and relieve mom.
Yeah.
Maybe she doesn't even leave the house.
Right. And to recognize that will shift and evolve. Your needs are going to shift. And I think that's one thing people are shocked by too, is that after having babies, many of us, our basic needs even shift. We might need a lot more or a lot less of one thing that we needed before. We're different beings once we become mothers. And so again, going back to giving yourself permission to evolve, to continue to evolve and realize you are not the same person you were. And that's to be celebrated. And in 6 months from now, you will be a slightly different version of you too. And this is a beautiful evolution. And that when those shifts happen, your needs will shift too. So the more support that we can seek out, and the more that, and we, you know, I really believe we teach others around us how we want to be treated based on the way that we treat ourselves. So the more we learn to take care of ourselves, the more we give that message out there that we believe ourselves worthy of being cared for.
Right. It starts with us.
Yep. Absolutely.
I love that. Well, on that note, it might be a good time to wrap up unless you'd like to make any final points.
I'm just really grateful that you are bringing awareness to this fourth trimester. I think it's a really important part of the progression that we not skip over, that it be given just as much attention and care as we're getting during the other parts of the baby having experience. This is very much a very, very vulnerable time within, it's no less vulnerable. In fact, I would say it's more vulnerable than most of the pregnancy. So I think it's essential and really beautiful that you are drawing attention to how important this time is. So I have a lot of gratitude for you for that.
Well, thank you. And I feel a lot of gratitude for people like you who are doing work kind of hands-on with moms, whatever stage that they're in, to help them recognize their value and feel good and be whole people.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Beth, you've got your website. People can contact you, social media. They can get in touch if they want your consulting services. The website, again, is revolutionfromhome.com.
That's it.
Thank you so much, Beth.
Thank you, Sarah. I really appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You can subscribe to this podcast in order to hear more from us. Thank you for listening, everyone, and I hope you'll join us next time on the Fourth Trimester. The theme music on this podcast was created by Sean Trott. Hear more at soundcloud.com/Sean Trott. Special thanks to my true loves, my husband Ben, daughter Penelope, and baby girl Evelyn. Don't forget to share the Fourth Trimester Podcast with any new and expecting parents. I'm Sarah Trott. Goodbye for now.
Hello again, bicycle man. I know you're doing all that you can. I wrote the song, simple and true. I wrote the song, I'll sing a song for you. You got your wheels, you got your gears. You ride around town without any fear. You got your pedals, you got your brakes. You always wear your helmet for safety's sake. Hello again, bicycle man. I know you're doing all that you can. I wrote the song, simple and true. I wrote the song, I sing a song for you. Hello again, bicycle man. I know you're doing the best that you can. I wrote the song, simple and true. I wrote the song, I sing a song for you.